Welcome to the deep dive. Today, you and I are venturing into a really fascinating space where nature and the spiritual world seem to collide. We're talking about Thai folklore and the spirits known as Nang Mai, the ones said to live in trees. We've been looking into Thai folklore descriptions to sort of guide us here.
Exactly. And, we're aiming to go beyond just simple ghost stories. The idea is to really get into the cultural significance, the heart of these beliefs. And what we found looking at these sources is actually quite surprising. Lots of detail about what Nang Mai are like, how they interact with people.
And this mix of older animistic beliefs with other traditions, right?
Precisely. It's a really captivating blend.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What exactly is a Nang Mai?
Well, fundamentally, a Nang Mai is a spirit in Thai folklore. And the belief is that they inhabit large trees. And interestingly, they're said to build like an unseen palace inside the tree.
An invisible palace.
Oh.
Wow. That's a powerful idea within the tree itself.
Yeah, it's their domain, a sort of spiritual home in the physical world.
And do we know what they look like? The sources seem pretty specific.
They are, actually. Usually, a Nang Mai is pictured as a young woman. She's often wearing a traditional pleated robe, maybe with a sash, and her hair is about shoulder length. But it's not always a woman. That's quite interesting.
Oh, so male spirits, too.
Yes. If the spirit is male, it's called a Rukkadeva.
Nang Mai for female, Rukkadeva for male. Got it.
Is there a difference in the trees they prefer?
Generally, yeah. Rukkadevas seem to be associated more with the really big, imposing trees, like banyan trees. Nang Mai, on the other hand, maybe slightly smaller trees, relatively speaking.
Okay. And this invisible palace idea, it kind of implies that disturbing the tree wouldn't be a good idea.
Definitely not. The folklore is very clear about that. Cutting down a tree with a Nang Mai is said to bring a curse on whoever did it.
A curse? Like what?
It could be sickness, or in some stories, even madness.
Madness. There's a serious consequence. Absolutely. It's a strong deterrent, really. You could even see it as a kind of unintentional early form of environmental protection built into the belief system.
That's a fascinating way to look at it. A spiritual belief with real-world ecological impact. So they're not all just, spooky, malevolent ghosts. Our sources mentioned different types.
That's right. It's not black and white. There are believed to be good Nang Mai and, well, not so good ones. A good Nang Mai might act as a protector, maybe even warn the tree's owner if they've taken good care of it, warn them about some danger coming.
Like a guardian spirit of the tree. That's quite comforting.
It is. But then you have the other side, the ones considered evil.
Ah, okay. What about them? How do they interact with people?
Well, those are portrayed as much more dangerous. They might lure men sometimes to be their husbands in the spirit world.
Right, I've heard similar ideas in other folklore.
Exactly. Or, in the darker versions, they might just lure them to their deaths.
Definitely perilous, not someone you'd want to run into. Now, Nang Mai seems like a general term. You mentioned Nang Tani and Nang Ta-khian earlier. How do they fit in?
Good question. Yes, Nang Tani, she's often linked to banana trees, sometimes depicted with a greenish tint, and Nang Ta-khian, who's associated with the valuable Ta-khian tree. They are considered types of Nang Mai, but there's a distinction made. For instance, the spirit of someone who, say, died by suicide and is somehow tied to a tree, that's not considered a Nang Mai. The origin matters.
Interesting. So not every spirit in a tree gets that label. You mentioned Nang Ta-khian.
Yeah.
The sources suggested they could be more hostile.
Yeah, there's a belief connected to the Ta-khian tree specifically. The idea is the bigger and older the Ta-khian tree, the more powerful and potentially more haunting the Nang Ta-khian spirit inside it is.
So size equals power, in a way, like a vintage rating for spirits.
Sort of. Proceed with caution for the ancient ones, maybe.
Yeah.
There's another detail, too, about the tree's sap.
Sap. How did that connect?
Some beliefs link higher sap production in a Ta-khian tree to a more, let's say, potent or potentially malevolent Nang Ta-khian, as if the tree's own life force feeds the spirit's intensity.
Wow. Okay, so we have the basics down, but the stories, the legends, that's where it gets really engaging, right? The actual interaction.
Absolutely. That's where you see the depth of the relationship. Take the story of the kidnapped princess, I believe from Nakhon Si Thammarat.
Oh, right. The monarch's daughter, killed and hidden in a mango tree. A tragic story.
Very tragic. But her spirit became incredibly powerful afterwards. So much so that local people started to respect and then actually worship her. And this led to a specific tradition in a village nearby.
Where families would, introduce their young sons to her spirit. For protection.
Exactly, seeking her protection for the family. And it went further than just introductions.
Into actual marriages, spiritual marriages.
Yes. When a young man reached marriageable age, they'd hold a formal wedding ceremony with the spirit. It was seen as crucial for the family's well-being.
A spiritual marriage? But could the man still marry a human woman?
He could, yes. But there's a catch.
Oh.
If their first child was a boy, that son also had to marry the Nang Mai spirit when he came of age.
Wow, a multi-generational commitment. Talk about long-term in-laws. And what if a family skipped the ceremony? What were the supposed consequences?
The belief was that misfortune would follow the family. Bad luck, problems, until they performed the wedding. It was seen as necessary to keep things in balance.
So these rituals were taken very seriously, not just symbolic. And the weddings themselves sounded quite involved.
They were. Families prepared offering trays with gifts, money, specific sacrifices like a pig's head, alcohol, duck, chicken, fruit. And the ceremonies usually happened on Tuesdays or Saturdays, seen as auspicious days.
What about the groom? What did he wear?
He had to dress respectfully in traditional Thai wedding attire. And interestingly, he'd carry a dagger as part of the outfit. Plus, it'd be a Khan Mak procession, just like in a regular Thai wedding. It shows how deeply these beliefs were woven into everyday cultural practices.
It really does. And there was another story about wishes being granted, a different kind of interaction.
Ah, yes. Folklore tells of a woman whose wish was granted by a Nang Mai. But she'd made a pledge. And to fulfill it, she had to disguise herself as a man and essentially marry the ghost.
Marry the ghost as a pledge fulfillment. That highlights the idea of reciprocity, doesn't it? Making deals with spirits.
Exactly. It wasn't all just fear. There was this element of seeking help and then being bound by your promises. Which brings us to the wider picture, how these beliefs shaped people's relationship with nature.
Right, that fear of curses, sickness, madness if you cut down a tree. It must have had a real impact on deforestation.
Undoubtedly, it created this powerful, sort of supernatural incentive for conservation within communities. A kind of spiritual environmentalism, you might say.
And you mentioned the Ta-khian trees being especially sacred because their size and valuable wood.
Precisely. The spirits in those high-quality large trees were considered particularly powerful. So you'd think twice, maybe 3 times before touching one.
And if you had to cut one down, say, out of necessity,
then there were proper procedures. You had to perform ceremonies first to ask the spirit for forgiveness. It was about showing respect and trying to avoid, negative consequences.
It's fascinating how these animistic beliefs managed to coexist with Buddhism as it spread. They weren't just erased.
No, they often integrated. It shows a real cultural adaptability. What's really interesting is how even Buddhism seemed to acknowledge these nature spirits. We found references to precepts for monks, the Buddhakam Sakaba.
Which included rules against harming plants.
Yes, specifically mentioning not cutting fresh grass or trees. It suggests at least a pragmatic recognition, if not full incorporation, of these older beliefs about spirits and nature.
So even the major religion made space for them. And this reverence, it hasn't completely vanished today, has it?
Not at all. You still see it. People in Thailand paying respect to large old trees. They might leave offerings.
Like costumes, perfume, makeup. I read about that.
Exactly. Little dresses, perfumes, makeup sets. The belief persists that sacred spirits live in these trees. And these offerings show respect, maybe seek favor.
So the motivation is often about seeking blessings. Good luck, better life.
Often, yes. Worshipping Nang Mai or Rukadeva is believed by many to bring positive things. Good fortune, health, protection.
And there are specific well-known shrines too, right? Like the Sao Ranghai Shrine.
That's a very famous one at Watsung in the Sao Hai district. It's dedicated to Chow Mai Ta-khian Tong, a powerful Nang Mai linked to a particular Ta-khian tree pillar. It's a popular place for people to visit, and the offerings there are mostly feminine items, reinforcing the idea of a female spirit.
And the name Sao Ranghai, crying pillar. There's a whole story behind that involving Bangkok's city pillar.
There is, yes. A really quite poignant legend. When Bangkok was being established, they needed wood for the city pillar, a hugely important spiritual marker. They sourced pillars from all over. Saraburi province sent this magnificent Ta-khian thong pole. It was actually chosen initially.
But then rejected.
Yes. Apparently, the officials complained the very tip was crooked. So it was rejected for the city pillar.
Oh, devastating. For the spirit, I mean.
Exactly. The story goes the spirit within the pillar was heartbroken, weeping even. And then, miraculously, the pillar floated back upriver from Bangkok, all the way to the Pa Sak River. It ended up near the Sao Hai district office. and villagers reported hearing a woman crying near the river.
And they found the pillar.
They found the pillar floating and then saw it slowly sink. And because of the crying sounds and finding the pillar, they named the village Ban Sao Hai Village of the Crying Pillar.
What an incredible story. It really brings the belief to life. So, wrapping up our deep dive, it's clear Nang Mai are way more than just ghosts and trees.
Oh, definitely. They're complex figures, deeply embedded in Thai culture, linked to nature, capable of both good and harm. This mix of ancient animism and later influences is just...
Well, it's fascinating.
It really is, and
Yeah.
it makes you think, doesn't it, about how belief shapes our relationship with the world around us. So maybe something for our listeners to ponder. How do these old stories still echo today, and how we see nature, conservation, maybe even the unseen? And what could modern versions of these beliefs look like in our, rapidly changing world? Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.